If you think you understand this place, the silent endurance, the weight of history in the very soil, stop for a moment and listen. This is not the story you've been told. This is Red Willow, a land where the past is not a memory, but a constant, breathing presence, where survival is measured in generations of quiet defiance. I need you to hear this. If you know a place like this, tell me in the comments. If you don't, you need to subscribe, because what follows will show you a world that exists just beneath the surface of maps and headlines, a world where the oldest debts are the ones that finally come due. My name is Eli Blackwood. I am the sheriff here. My father was Namunu. My mother was not. I spent 10 years in the army, walking deserts on the other side of the world, thinking I had seen the shape of human suffering. I came home to Red Willow believing I understood the mechanics of survival. I was wrong. What I didn't understand was the cost of memory or the terrible patience of a wrong land. The first call that broke the uneasy peace of a reservation autumn came on a Tuesday. The cold had arrived early that year, a sharp, penetrating chill that spoke of a long winter ahead. It didn't just nip at your skin. It settled into the bones of the land itself, into the timber of the houses, into the marrow of those who called this hard place home. I was in my office, buried beneath the particular avalanche of paperwork that serves as justice in a place like Red Willow. Here, funding is a myth, resources are a prayer, and hope is a currency spent carefully, if at all. The radio on my desk crackled to life, slicing through the silence. The voice belonged to Deputy Lena Cloudtalker, the only person on this reservation I trusted with my life and with the truth of my own divided heritage. "Sheriff, you need to take this." Her tone was flat professional, but I knew her well enough to hear the tension humming beneath the words. "Go ahead, Lena. We've got a missing person. Kai Rivers, 23 years old. His mother, Maya, says he left the house last night around 10 to go for a drive. Never came back." I was already on my feet, my coat half on. Any indication of where he was headed? Any trouble he might be running from or toward? "That's the first thing, Sheriff. She doesn't know. He just said he needed to clear his head, but his car is still parked in the driveway." She paused, and the static filled the space like a hell breath. "And there's a second thing. His brother, Michael, called Maya this morning. Says Kai called him around midnight. He was excited. Said he'd met a woman out near the Old Ridge Road junction. A stunning woman, he said. Said he was going to give her a ride. Old Ridge Road, a name that conjured nothing but empty space. It was a scar of asphalt that ran along the reservation's southern boundary, a lonely vein through miles of grassland and scrub, past the occasional collapsed trailer or abandoned shack. No one walked Old Ridge Road, not for pleasure, not out of necessity, and certainly not at midnight in late October. A beautiful woman, there was not just unlikely, it was a geographical impossibility that set every instinct I possessed on high alert. "I'm on my way," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. "Meet me at the Rivers place. And Lena, get the brother's statement. Every word." The drive to the Rivers home was a short one to the heart of what we optimistically called town, a cluster of tribal administration buildings, a struggling grocery store, a faded community center. Their house sat at the very edge of the semblance of order, a small, weather-beaten structure with a porch that sagged with the weight of years. Maya Rivers was waiting for me, wrapped in a thick wool shawl that did nothing to conceal the tremor in her hands or the stark fear etched into her face. "Sheriff Blackwood," she said, her voice raspy. She didn't greet me in our language, a small omission that spoke volumes about her state of mind. "My boy, he doesn't just disappear. Something has happened. I can feel it." "Tell me everything, Maya," I said, stepping inside. The house was a capsule of warmth against the invading cold, heated by a wood stove in the corner. The air smelled of cedar smoke and fry bread, a familiar, comforting scent that clashed violently with the anxiety thrumming in the room. The walls were a testament to family. Photographs spanning generations, a proud gallery of graduation portraits, traditional regalia, and smiling faces. Kai's photo was among them, a younger, hopeful version of the man now missing. She poured coffee with hands that shook, the bitter liquid sloshing against the chipped mugs. He's been adrift lately, Sheriff. You know how it is for the young ones here. The drinking, the no jobs, the feeling that the walls are closing in. Last night he said he needed air, needed to drive. Just think, I heard him take his keys. She gestured weakly toward the front window, where an old sedan sat silent in the gray morning light. But the car is there, and his bed, it hasn't been slept in. Did he take anything with him? His phone? His wallet? Wallet's gone. Phone is... She led us to his small, sparse bedroom. The bed was unmade, clothes strewn about. On the nightstand, a smartphone lay dark and inert. Lena, who had arrived silently behind me, picked it up, found a charger, and plugged it in. The little light blinked on, a tiny, futile beacon. We'll need to look through this, Maya, Lena said gently. Maya nodded, but her eyes were distant, fixed on a memory. His brother called me this morning. Michael. He said Kai called him last night, near midnight. He was happy, excited. Said he'd met this woman walking on Old Ridge Road. Said she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Like something from a dream. He was going to give her a ride. Maybe get coffee. That was the last thing. The last anyone heard. A beautiful woman. On Old Ridge Road. At midnight. The three facts refused to align in any rational configuration. They formed a triangle of wrongness that set my teeth on edge. Instincts forged in the deliberate chaos of war and honed by the slow-burn crises of the reservation screamed in unison. This was not a simple missing person. What did Michael think? This was a predator's opening move, forcing my voice to stay level. Did Kai sound drunk? Was he using? Maya shook her head, a tear finally breaking free and tracing a path down her cheek. Michael said he sounded clear, sober, just hopeful. He told his brother, "This might be it, Mikey. This might be my luck finally turning." Her voice shattered on the last word. He's been so low, Sheriff. I thought maybe meeting someone nice. I placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort I wasn't sure I had the right to give. We'll find him, Maya. The promise felt like ash in my mouth. In law enforcement, you never promise outcomes. You deal in probabilities and evidence. But looking at the raw hope and terror in her eyes, the words came out anyway. They were a lie, but a necessary one. Lena and I spent the rest of that day on Old Ridge Road. We drove its length, walked its shoulders, questioned the few souls who lived in its lonely orbit. The answers were a uniform, unsettling chorus. No, didn't see anything. Wasn't out last night. Road was empty. The landscape offered no clues. No skid marks, no torn fabric caught on sagebrush, no signs of a struggle. It was as if the road had simply opened up and swallowed Kai Rivers whole. His phone, once charged, confirmed the call to his brother at 11:48 p.m. Then digital silence. No more calls, no texts, no location pings. He had vanished into the October night, without leaving a single technological fingerprint behind. As we drove back to the station, the sun was a bleeding wound on the horizon, staining the distant badlands in hues of orange and crimson. The beauty of it was harsh, indifferent. "What's your read, Sheriff?" Lena asked, her eyes on the dying light. "It's off," I admitted. No evidence of flight. No evidence of foul play. No evidence of anything. He's just absent. You think someone took him? Trafficking? Did he owe money? Maybe. Or maybe he just finally ran, and he's smart enough not to leave a trail. Even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The wrongness of it was a physical taste in my mouth, metallic, cold. Lena was quiet for a long moment, the only sound hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel under tires. Then she spoke, her voice so soft I almost missed it. My grandfather, he used to tell us stories, when we were kids, about women who walk the roads at night. Beautiful women. Women who aren't what they seem. I knew exactly what she was referencing. The dear woman stories, Lena. I know what they are, Sheriff, but my grandfather believed them. Truly, he said if you're driving at night and you see a beautiful woman alone on the road, you don't slow down. You don't make eye contact. You drive straight past. Because if you stop, you might not drive away. That's mythology, I said, perhaps too sharply. We're looking for a flesh and blood person, a motive, a method. I know that, she said, meeting my gaze briefly. I'm just saying, the people here, the older ones, the traditional ones like Maya Rivers, they still live with those stories. They're real to them. If we go to her and say we think Kai might have met the dear woman, she let the sentence hang. Its implication clear, it would sound like madness. Or worse, like we were giving up. We're not saying that, I said firmly, turning back to the road. We're following evidence. We're treating this as a criminal investigation. But her words had hooked into something deep in my own memory. My father's voice, telling those same stories by firelight. A spirit of vengeance, appearing as irresistible beauty to punish men who strayed from the old ways. Men who were unfaithful, disrespectful, lost. Just stories. Cautionary tales for children. Yet, the feeling, that deep-seated sense of fundamental wrongness, wouldn't leave. It clung like the chill in the air. That night, alone in my office with a bitter cup of coffee, I did what I should have done days ago. I pulled every missing person report from the Red Willow Reservation for the past 8 months. The files were thin, the conclusions unsatisfying, the resources for proper investigation non-existent. I had glanced at them as they came in, filed them away with a silent, weary acknowledgement of the tragedies that defined life here. But looking at them now, together, under the stark glow of my desk lamp, a different picture emerged, a horrifying one. There were 3 other young men. Raymond Tallbear, 24, last seen leaving a friend's house after a party, said he was giving a pretty hitchhiker a ride home. That was 6 months ago. Marcus Little Shield, 25, told his girlfriend he was meeting a woman whose car had broken down on the highway. She's gorgeous, like out of a magazine, he'd texted. 5 months ago. David Two Rivers, 22. His roommate said he got a late-night call, left in a hurry saying he had to help a damsel in distress. 4 months ago, I had known about each case. Each had a plausible, tragic narrative woven around it. Raymond had talked about leaving for the city. Marcus had dabbled with pills. David had bouts of depression. It was easy, so easy, to let the stories of a struggling reservation explain away the losses. But now, the common thread screamed from the pages. Not just their age, their gender, their Namuna heritage. It was the woman, the beautiful, mysterious, last-minute woman who needed their help. A beautiful woman on a lonely road. The same story, told 4 times. For men, for whispers of impossible beauty, for disappearances without a single trace of evidence, without a body, without a clue. My hands were cold. This was no longer a series of sad, isolated incidents. This was a pattern. This was a predator. But what kind of predator operated with such flawless, ghostly efficiency? What kind left not a shred of physical evidence? No forensic trail, no digital footprint. What kind existed only in the final, excited words of the vanished? The phone on my desk rang. Sheriff, jerking me from the dark spiral of my thoughts. Wire. We got another one. Elijah Bearrobe, 24. His sister just called it in. He left his apartment last night after a phone call around 11:30. Told her he was meeting someone. A woman, he said she sounded like a dream on the phone. When was this? I asked, the cold in my hand spreading to my core. Last night. The sister didn't think anything of it until he didn't come home this afternoon, didn't answer his phone. I'm on my way. Get the sister's full statement. I want every detail about that call. I grabbed my jacket, the weight of my sidearm familiar, and suddenly useless against a thing taking shape in the darkness. 5 men, 5 young Namuna men, all vanished after an encounter with a vision. Driving through the reservation night, past the pinprick lights of trailers and the occasional glow of a kitchen window, Lena's words echoed. Women who walk the roads at night. Women who aren't what they seem. In the old stories, the dear woman had hooves. She was a warning made flesh, a lesson from a time when the world and the spirit world were not so separate. But those were just stories, weren't they? Elijah Bearrobe's apartment was an tired-looking complex that had been new 40 years ago. Paint peeled from the siding, and the single streetlight flickered a sickly yellow. His sister, Tala, was a silhouette of anxiety pacing the cracked sidewalk, the glow of a cigarette carving nervous arcs in the darkness. "Sheriff," she said, rushing toward my truck before I'd fully stopped. "Thank God. It's Elijah. He's in trouble." "I know it. This isn't him." "Start with a phone call, Tala." I said, stepping out. "Tell me everything." She took a shaky drag, the ember brightening her frightened eyes. It was late, maybe 11:30. His phone rang. He went into his room to take it. I could hear him, talking sweet, laughing. Then he comes out, and he's lit up, just buzzing. Said a woman needed help with her car out by the old mill on Old Ridge. Said he had to go. The old mill? The abandoned cement plant was another landmark of emptiness, a decaying industrial ghost on the same cursed road. Yeah, I told him it was weird, Sheriff. I said, "Elijah, don't go out there this time of night for some stranger." But he had this look. Said she sounded amazing. Said, "This never happened to me." And he left. Did you see the number that called him? No, but she pointed back to the apartment door. His phone's still in there, on the charger. He said he'd be right back. He didn't need it. He left his phone. That detail was a spike of ice in my gut. In a world tethered to these devices, why would a young man leave behind? Only if he was told to. Only if this wasn't a chance encounter, but a planned rendezvous with someone who demanded discretion. Lena arrived, her cruiser pulling in quietly. She gave me a brief, grim nod and went inside to process the apartment. I followed Tala in. The living room was small, dominated by a large television and video game consoles. It smelled of instant noodles and stale smoke. Elijah's room was neater than I expected. Lena was already there, her gloved hands hovering over the nightstand. "Sheriff," she said, her voice low, "look at this." On the scratched nightstand, next to the charging phone, was a single sheet of notebook paper. On it, drawn in meticulous pencil, was a woman's face. It was stunning work, capturing not just features but an aura, a haunting, ethereal beauty with eyes that seemed to hold galaxies in profound, unsettling sadness. The hair was dark and flowing, the lips slightly parted as if about to speak. It was the face of a dream, or a haunting. Elijah drew this? I asked Tala. She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. Yeah, a few days ago. He said he'd been dreaming about her, that she was calling to him. At first, I thought it was just a crush, an artist's muse. But last week, he got weird. He told me he was seeing her, not in dreams, in reflections, in windows as he drove past, just glimpses. He said she was everywhere, watching him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Sheriff, he was obsessed. It wasn't healthy. Did he tell anyone else? Get any help? Our mom, she got scared, real scared. Last week, she took him to see Walter Many Roads. The name landed with the weight of a stone. Walter Many Roads was a medicine man, a keeper of the old ways. He was a link to a world I had consciously stepped away from when I put on the uniform, a man who viewed my return not as a homecoming, but as a continuation of a long abandonment. What did Many Roads say? I asked, already dreading the answer. Tala's eyes went wide, remembering. He got real serious. Told Elijah to stay inside after dark, to pray. He said something was hunting, that the spirits were angry and men were going to bear the cost. She looked from the drawing to my face, seeking an anchor in my skepticism. Elijah brushed it off, called him a superstitious old man. But Sheriff, what if he wasn't? What if Many Roads was right? There's someone out there, Tala, I said, forcing authority into my voice. A human predator, and we're going to find them. The words sounded hollow even to me. They were the expected script, the rational response. But they couldn't erase the drawing, or the identical pattern, or the creeping sense that we were chasing a shadow. We drove out to the abandoned mill, Lena and I, our headlights cutting twin sabers of light to the absolute blackness beyond the reservation's scant lights. The mill loomed against a starry sky, a jagged silhouette of broken concrete and rusted rebar, a monument to failed industry and forgotten promises. We searched in silence, the beams of our flashlights dancing over cracked floors and dusty machinery. The place was a tomb. We found beer can graffiti, the detritus of bored teenagers, but nothing of Elijah. My rational mind began to reassert itself. This was a dead end. He'd met someone here. They'd left in another vehicle, and he was in a ditch somewhere or across a state line. Then Lena's voice cut through the silence, sharp and clear. Sheriff, over here. She was at the back of the main structure, where the concrete gave way to hard-packed dirt and sage. She was crouched, her light fixed on the ground. I knelt beside her. There, in the dry earth, were impressions, clear, sharp, and utterly out of place. They were not boot prints. They were not tire tracks. They were hoof prints, deer tracks, perfectly formed, pressed deep into the soil as if the animal had been standing here, motionless, for some time. And right beside the clearest print, caught on a dry twig, was a shred of dark blue polyester fabric, the same color as the jacket Tala said Elijah was wearing. I stared. My brain stuttered. Try and force the evidence into a logical box. A deer had wandered through. Elijah had torn his jacket on something. Coincidence. Proximity. It had to be, but the tracks were fresh, and they stopped abruptly, as if the deer had simply appeared on the spot, stood, and then vanished. There were no tracks leading away. Sheriff, Lena said, her voice barely audible. She didn't look at me, her eyes fixed on the cloven impressions. My grandfather, he said that's how you know. The final thing. If you look down, and you see hooves where there should be feet, you run. You don't look back. But by then, she finally turned her head, and her face in the flashlight's backglow was pale. By then, he said it's always too late. I stood up, my knees protesting. The night felt heavier, the darkness thicker. Lena was a modern woman, a deputy with a degree in criminal justice. She was also her grandfather's granddaughter, raised on stories that predated justice systems. You believe it, sir? I asked, the question sounding absurd in my own ears. I don't know what I believe anymore, she said, her professional composure cracking at the edges. But I know 5 men are gone. I know a medicine man gave a specific warning that was ignored. And I know we're standing here looking at deer tracks where a man was last seen. She met my gaze, and the fear in her eyes was real. When does coincidence stop being an explanation and start being confession? I had no answer. Logic was failing. We talked to Walter many roads. I said, my voice rough. First thing tomorrow. We get answers he can't give us in a file. The drive back was a silent, tense affair. The sketch of that beautiful, haunted face was burned into my mind, in my rear-view mirror. As we crested a hill, I could have sworn I saw a figure standing on the center line of Old Ridge Road, a pale shape in the darkness. But when I blinked, looked again, the road was empty, just my tired eyes and a mind beginning to fray at the seams. My personal phone rang, the generic tone loud in the quiet cab. The screen said Dad. I answered, Eli. He used my name, not the Lakota endearment. His voice was grave. Dad, I'm in the middle of something. I know what you're in the middle of, he said, speaking in our language. The missing boys, the ones who met the woman. A fresh chill, unrelated to the truck's heater, swept through me. How did you? This place is a small room. Pia'kʉtʉ, whispers travel on the wind. You need to come. Now, there are things you must hear, things you must understand, before more are lost. Dad, I have an investigation to run. I can't just... This is the investigation, he snapped, his patience gone. The part your rule books and your army training have blinded you to. Come home, Eli. It is time you remember what you are, not just what you chose to become. The line went dead. Lena glanced over. Your father? Yeah. Are you going? I thought of the hoof prints in the dirt, the drawing, the 5 names now on the whiteboard in my office, the cold, irreducible fear in the pit of my stomach. My father, for all his frustration with me, was not an alarmist. He was a man who spoke sparingly and meant every word. Yeah, I said, turning the wheel away from the station. I'm going. Maybe it was time to listen to a different kind of intelligence. My father's house was a humble structure he'd built himself, nestled against the rising sandstone of the canyons. It was apart, separate from the town, closer to the old ways and the older bones of the land. He was waiting on the porch, a blanket around his shoulders, his face like carved leather in the moonlight. Pia'kʉtʉ, he said, the familiar word now sounding like an accusation. You took your time. I was at a crime scene. He made a short, dismissive sound. You still call it that. A scene. As if it has boundaries. As if it's contained. He turned and walked inside. Come. The cold is not just in the air tonight. His home was warm, lit by a single kerosene lamp and the orange glow of the iron stove. The air was rich with the smells of sage, tobacco, and dried meat. It was the smell of my childhood, a scent that now felt foreign and intimately familiar all at once. He poured bitter black coffee into a chipped mug and pushed it toward me. 5 young men, he said without preamble, all taken after meeting beauty. You have seen the signs, the dreams, the tracks, and still you wrestle with it. You try to make it fit inside your little boxes. What I know, I said, clinging to my role, is that 5 families are waiting for answers. I owe them facts. You owe them the truth, he corrected, his dark eyes holding mine. And the truth is you will not find their sons breathing. Not if she has already taken them. Your only hope now is to prevent more deaths, to stop the taking. He leaned forward, the lamplight casting deep shadows in the lines of his face. Do you remember the stories I told you? Of Pia'kʉtʉ? The name triggered a memory, distant and hazy. Stories told not at bedtime, but as warnings. The double walker, I murmured. Yes, one face of captivating beauty, to draw the eye and the desire. The other, the face of the grave, of vengeance. She walks, has always walked, punishing those who deserve it, men who forget, men who disrespect the sacred balance. They're stories, Dad, parables, lessons about how to live. They are history, he insisted, his voice low and fierce. She is as old as the pain in this land. She was here before the first European foot broke a blade of grass. And she is awake now. You can call her a serial killer. You can call her a myth, but she is real, Eli. And she is hunting. Why now? I asked, the coffee bitter on my tongue. If she's always been here, why take these men now? Because the balance is broken, he said, gesturing to the window and the dark land beyond. The young have forgotten the old ways. They drink the poison of despair. They show disrespect to women, to the earth, to themselves. The threads are frayed. He paused, his gaze turning inward. But Walter Many Roads believes it is more specific. He believes it is tied to the hollow. The word was a punch to the anniversary. It was the place we did not name lightly. In 1892, U.S. cavalry troops had surrounded a winter camp of our people there. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. Over 200 men, women, and children were cut down. Their bodies were thrown into a mass grave. Medals were given to the soldiers. It was a wound that never healed, the foundational trauma of our existence here. What does a massacre from 1892 have to do with men disappearing now? I asked, my rational mind rebelling at the connection. Everything. My father said simply, the anniversary is in 5 days, 132 years. Many Roads says the spirits of the hollow are restless. They cry out for justice for the blood that was spilled. True justice, which has never come. If they cannot have justice, he looked at me, his eyes full of a terrible understanding, they will take vengeance. Your young men are dying because our old ones died and the world looked away. The concept was monstrous. Collective punishment. Transgenerational vengeance. It offended every modern principle I held. But it resonated with a deeper, older part of me that understood history not as dates in a book, but as a living force. So what do I do? The question was out before I could stop it. A surrender. How do you fight a spirit? You do not fight her, he said, shaking his head slowly. You cannot. She is a force, a judgment. He stood, walked to an ancient wooden chest, and withdrew a small leather pouch, worn smooth with age. He placed it in my hand. It was warm, but you can guard yourself. You can try to make the spirits understand that not all have forgotten, that some still remember the dead. I opened the pouch. Inside was a mix of crushed herbs, a small, smooth stone, and a fragment of what looked like bone, all bound with a strand of sinew. Protection medicine, he said. Walter made it for you when he heard you were asking the right questions. Wear it, always. It may not stop her if she is determined, but it may let you see her true face before she strikes. It may give you a moment's warning. I wanted to refuse it. It was superstition. It was the antithesis of the badge on my chest. But I had seen things in the desert that defied explanation, and I had learned to respect any advantage, however unorthodox. I slipped the cord over my head, tucking the pouch under my shirt and uniform. It lay against my skin, a strange, warm weight. Elijah Bear robe, my father said, sitting back down. He came to me 2 days before he vanished. His eyes were wide with dreams. He spoke of a beautiful woman haunting his sleep. I told him to stay inside, to burn sage, to pray. He was a good boy, but he was young. He was hungry for a different life than this one offers. So he went meet the vision in his dreams. His voice was thick with a grief that was both personal and vast. You knew he was in danger, and you didn't call me? The sheriff in me was outraged. "And what would you have done, Sheriff Blackwood?" he asked. The title a deliberate blade. "Put him in a cell for having bad dreams? You would have humored me, then dismissed me, just as you have spent your life dismissing this part of who you are." He wasn't wrong. The shame of that truth was acute. The others? I asked quietly. Kai, River's mother, brought him to me weeks ago. He saw the woman in mirrors and puddles, in the windows of passing cars. I tried. They all think I'm a crazy old man whispering about ghosts. The resignation in his voice was a heavier burden than anger. Tomorrow, you'll see Walter many roads. He knows the full story. He may know how to end this. And tonight, I pressed. Someone else could be getting a call right now. "Tonight," my father said, rising and fetching a bundle of sage and an abalone shell from a shelf. "You prepare. You cleanse yourself of doubt. You get ready to face something your army manuals never mentioned." He lit the sage, letting the smoke curl up. "Come, we will do this properly, not as sheriff and civilian, but as father and son, as one who remembers, reminding one who has forgotten." For the first time since I was a teenager, I stood silently as my father performed the smudging ceremony. He moved the smoke over me with an eagle feather, speaking low, resonant prayers in the language of our ancestors. The sacred smoke filled my lungs, and the ancient words washed over me. I felt absurd, a sheriff in a duty belt being blessed for a spiritual war, and yet I also felt a settling, a grounding I hadn't known I needed. Perhaps the warrior he was preparing wasn't the one I'd been. It was near midnight when I left, the pouch of warm presents under my clothes. I took Old Ridge Road back. I told myself it was the fastest route. I was lying. I was looking for her. And I found her, a figure, pale and solitary, standing on the gravel shoulder just beyond the reach of my headlights. A woman, in a simple dress, alone on the empty midnight road. Every cell in my body, every story from my childhood, every warning from my father, and Lena's grandfather screamed at me to accelerate, to look away, to flee. But I was a cop, and she was a person on a dark road. I slowed, rolling to a stop a car's length away. I kept the engine running, the headlights blazing on her. I lowered my window, my right hand resting on the grip of my sidearm. "Ma'am," I called out, "do you need assistance?" She turned, and in that moment, I understood the power that had drawn 5 men to their doom. She was not merely beautiful. Hers was a beauty that bypassed thought and lodged directly in the primal brain. It was perfection that hurt to look at, like staring at the sun. Her features were timeless, her dark eyes deep pools that seemed to hold swirling constellations. Her hair was black as a raven's wing, flowing over her shoulders. She wore a white dress that should have been foolish in the cold, but on her it seemed right. She smiled. "Sheriff Blackwood," she said. Her voice was melody and razor wire. "I've been waiting for you." The protection pouch beneath my shirt flared with sudden, intense heat, searing against my skin like a brand. A warning. "How do you know my name?" I asked, my fingers tightening on the gun. "I know all the men of Red Willow," she said, taking a step closer. She cast no shadow in the headlights. "I know their hungers, their regrets, their secret, shameful hopes." Another step. "You hunt for me." For my the one taking your young pistol, man, leveling it through the open window. Stay where you are." She laughed. The sound was like icicles shattering on stone. Beautiful and terrifying. "Your weapons are toys, Sheriff. Noisemakers. I am not something you can shoot or cage." She placed a hand on my door just below the window. Her fingers were long, elegant. Her nails were sharp, pointed, like polished obsidian. "Not human. But you interest me. You walk the line between worlds. You understand what it is to be two things at once. Divided. Like me." "Were you?" The question was a whisper. "You know," she said, leaning closer. Her scent was a collision. The clean, holy smell of sage and sweetgrass, undercut by the deep, wet, rotten odor turned earth and decay. "Your father told you. I am Pia'kʉtʉ. I am the reckoning for debts left unpaid. I am the memory of trauma, given form and purpose." "The 5 men," I demanded. The gun steadied my hand, though I now knew its futility. "Where are they?" "Where all who offer their desires payment must go," she said, her eyes beginning to darken, the stars within them winking out into pools of absolute black. "Into the earth, into the past, into the ledger your people have owed for 132 years. She tilted her head. They saw only my beauty, not the price it carries. So they paid, willingly, eagerly even, just as their ancestors eagerly took the poisoned blankets, the broken treaties, the empty promises. This isn't justice. This is murder." "Is it murder when the land reclaims the blood that was stolen from it?" she hissed, her beautiful face contorting for an instant with a rage so ancient it froze my blood. "Is it murder when the spirits finally come to collect what is owed? The anniversary approaches. The Hollow remembers. The spirits remember. And they are hungry. Your young men die because your old ones died and no one answered for it. No one paid. So you punish us for history?" "I remind you," she roared, and the sound was the wind through canyon bones. "I remind you that history is a living wound. That blood unjustly spilled does not dry. It calls out through generations until the debt is settled." She stepped back into the full glare of my headlights, and I saw her feet, where there should have been shoes or bare skin in the cold. There were hooves, cloven, elegant deer hooves, with tufts of dark fur at the ankle. The stories were true, every last one. "You have 5 days, Sheriff, until the dawn of the anniversary. Find a way to settle the debt of the Hollow, to appease the spirits who scream from that mass grave, or I will take every young man on this reservation, one by one. I will leave you with a generation of ghosts." "How?" My voice was dry, cracked. "How do we settle a debt like that? Ask your healers. Ask the spirits. But know this," she smiled again, and this time I saw it. The other face flickering beneath the beauty like a projected image. A face of rot, of exposed bone, of empty sockets, an endless, hungry void. "If you fail, I will take you last. I will make you watch every mother's grief, every father's silence. I will let you feel the weight of every life lost. And when you are hollowed out, when you are nothing but a vessel of their sorrow, then I will take you, too." She faded then, not walking away, but dissolving like mist in sudden sunlight. One moment she was there, the next, only the smell of sage and decay lingered, and the searing heat of medicine pouch against my chest that I sat there, in the idling truck on the empty road, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I fumbled for my phone, my hands numb. I called Lena. "We have a problem," I said when she answered, my voice foreign to me. "A big one." "What happened?" "I just met her. The woman. The one who's taking the man." I took a shuddering breath. "And Lena, she's not human. She's exactly, precisely, what your grandfather warned about." A long, dead silence on the line. Then, softly, "What do we do?" We go see Walter Many Roads. First light. Because if we don't figure out how to appease whatever this is in the next 5 days, there won't be a single young man left alive on this reservation. I drove home on autopilot, the phantom scent of sage and rot still clinging to the air in my truck. The reservation slept around me, a tapestry of shadows and the occasional, vulnerable glow of a nightlight in a window. Each light felt like a countdown. 5 days. 120 hours before something older than America came to collect a blood debt from the sons of Red Willow. Sleep was impossible. I made coffee that tasted like ash and spread every book, every printout, every faded photocopy I had about the Hollow Massacre across my kitchen table. I read until my eyes burned. The cold facts were bad enough. The winter of 1892, the encircling of the camp by the 7th Cavalry, the demand for weapons, the chaos of a single shot, then the relentless, indiscriminate volley into teepees where families huddled. The final tally, over 200 dead, mostly women and children. The bodies stripped of possessions, tossed into a trench. 20 medals of honor awarded to the soldiers. But it was the quieter details that gutted me. The reports of laughter among the troops as they did their work. The postcards made from photographs of the dead. The way it was framed in newspapers back east as a battle, a necessary conclusion to the Indian problem. The profound, sanctioned silence that followed. No trials, no reparations, no justice, just a mass grave on a wind-swept hill, and a story deliberately mangled in the telling. A debt inscribed not in ledgers, but in the land itself. Pia'kʉtʉ had called it a ledger. My father called it a reckoning. I was beginning to see it as an open, festering wound in the fabric of reality, one that had finally started to bleed through into the present at the first light. Lena picked me up. The pouches under her eyes mirrored my own. We didn't speak much on the drive to Walter Many Roads' place. He lived beyond the paved roads, down a winding dirt path that ended at a modest hogan and a collection of outbuildings. Horses grazed in a scrubland pasture. He was outside, as if expecting us, tending to a small herd with a quiet, practiced ease. He was a tall man, spine straight despite his years, his long hair gray and tied back. He wore simple, worn clothes, but his presence commanded the space around him. "Sheriff Blackwood," he said, without turning around, "you've finally come to listen to the old man. Took you long enough." His voice was dry, like leaves rustling. "We need your help, Mr. Many Roads," I said, stepping out of the truck. Pia'kʉtʉ, she gave us 5 days, until the hollow anniversary. He finished his task, then turned to face us. His eyes were red-rimmed, as if from lack of sleep or from weeping. The weight of his gaze was immense. "I try to warn them," he said, his voice thick with a grief that was both personal and vast. "Elijah, Kai, the others. But the young, they hear the old stories as entertainment, not as history, not as law." He gestured toward his home. "Come inside. The wind carries too many ears out here." His home was a single room, but it felt like a library of memory. The walls were covered not with books, but with maps, hand-drawn diagrams, faded photographs of the hollow site from different eras, and portraits of serious-faced ancestors. Bundles of sage, cedar, and sweetgrass hung from the rafters. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and aged paper. "The spirits are angry," he began, settling onto a low stool. "They have been angry for 132 winters. The massacre at the Hollow was meant to be the end of us, a final solution. When it was not, when we persisted, the spirits held the debt. They waited, watching, hoping the people themselves would make it right, would demand justice, would keep the memories sacred, would teach the truth." He looked from Lena to me. "We have not. We have let the world forget. We have let it become a paragraph in a textbook, a sad footnote. So now, the spirits take payment in the only currency they understand. Blood for blood. Life for life. How do we stop it? Lena asked, her voice respectful but firm. We can't. We can't just let her take everyone. You do not stop Pia'kʉtʉ, Many Road said, shaking his head slowly. She is not a villain to be defeated. She is justice and vengeance given walking form. She is the instrument of the dead. But you can appease her. You can offer something that balances the scales, that satisfies the hunger of the spirits, if only for a time. What kind of offering? I asked, stepping forward. What could possibly balance what happened there? He looked at me, his ancient eyes seeing through the badge, through the uniform, to the conflicted man beneath. Remembrance, he said. True remembrance. The spirits want the world to know. They want the crime acknowledged, not as a battle, but as a slaughter, as genocide. They want the dead honored properly by their own people on the land where they fell. They want a promise that the memory will be carried forward, that the lie will be replaced with truth. He stood and walked to a cedar chest, unlocking it with a small key from around his neck. From within, he drew a bundle wrapped in red felt cloth, tied with a leather cord. He carried it as if it were immensely heavy. A ceremony, he said, placing the bundle in my hands. It was heavy, with a tangible weight that felt like more than its physical components. At the Hollow, on the anniversary dawn, all the people must gather, not just a few elders. The community. We must call the spirits. We must speak the names of the dead that we remember. We must offer prayers, tobacco, cloth. We must tell the story out loud in full with no softening. And we must make a vow to the spirits and to ourselves that we will never let the world forget again, that we will teach our children and they will teach theirs. I unwrapped the cord. Inside were carefully written instructions in both English and Lakota, small pouches of sacred tobacco, strips of brightly colored cloth, and a carefully folded, ancient-looking prayer written on hide. But you, Sheriff, Many Road said, his finger pointing at my chest, you must lead it. You must be the voice that speaks the vow. The air left my lungs. I'm not a holy man. I'm not a leader in that way. I'm a cop. You are the sheriff, he corrected, his tone allowing no argument. You stand between the people and danger. You walk in both worlds, the modern law and the ancient law. You left and you came back. You are the perfect speaker. It must be you. This is your duty now, a duty greater than your badge. He paused, his expression darkening. But know this, if the ceremony is hollow, if the people come out of curiosity or fear, but not true remembrance, if the words are spoken without the heart's full commitment, the spirits will know. They will reject the offering. And if that happens, he met my eyes, and I saw genuine terror in his. It will not be 5 men or 6. She will take 50. She will take every young man on Red Willow until the debt feels paid. She will not stop. The responsibility crushed down on me, a physical pressure. The 5 already taken. Kai, Elijah, the others. Are they alive? They are in between, he said, his gaze turning inward, held by her, in the place where the past and present touch. If the ceremony works, if the spirits are truly appeased, there is a chance you can bring them back across. But only if it is done before the anniversary passes. After that, the door closes. They become part of the debt. Forever. I rewrapped the bundle, my mind reeling. A public ceremony based on a spiritual truth I was still struggling to accept. The stakes, redemption or annihilation. We drove back to a station in controlled pandemonium. A black SUV with federal plates was parked out front. Agent Daniel Reyes of the FBI was waiting in my office, a man in a crisp suit that looked alien against the worn backdrop of Red Willow. He was reviewing the case files on my desk. "Sheriff Blackwood," he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm, his eyes sharp and assessing. "Agent Reyes, I've been reviewing your MP cases. 5 young men in under a year. That's a pattern that demands federal attention. I appreciate you coming, Agent," I said, slipping into my professional role like a worn coat. "The situation here is culturally complex. I've worked on 6 reservations," he said, sitting back down. "I'm familiar with complex. What I'm seeing here suggests a predator with intimate knowledge of the community, possibly using local folklore to lure victims. The beautiful woman motif. It's a powerful lure, especially for isolated young men." His theory was logical, professional, and utterly wrong in a way I could never explain to him. I gave him the sanitized version. The facts without the hoof prints, without the burning medicine pouch, without the face in the darkness. He asked smart questions about trafficking rings, drug debts, personal conflicts. He was good at his job. If I hadn't seen her, I would have been nodding along. "The Tribal Council has approved a community gathering at the Hollow site in 4 days," I said, testing the waters. "It's related to the investigation, a show of solidarity, to put pressure on anyone who might know something." Reyes's brow furrowed. "A gathering? Sheriff, with all due respect, my evidence response team is en route. We need to be grid searching, conducting forensic reviews, not holding vigils. This is a major investigation." "The ceremony is part of the investigation," I said, my voice firm. "Trust me on this. I work on evidence, Sheriff, not trust." He closed his laptop with a definitive click. But before he could launch into a jurisdictional argument, Lena appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Sheriff, we have another one. Noah Little Sky, 22. His girlfriend just called. He left their apartment last night after a phone call from a woman. Said he was going to help her. My blood turned to ice. Last night, around 11, his mother, she confirmed he was wearing protection medicine Walter Many Roads gave him last week. The medicine had failed, or Noah had looked away, or Pia'kʉtʉ was growing stronger as the anniversary drew near, her power eclipsing the old protections. 6 men now. I drove back to Walter Many Roads' place alone, a storm of frustration and fear brewing in my chest. He was waiting, as if he felt the new loss on the wind. The protection failed, I said, not as an accusation, but a statement of terrifying fact. "Because the sacrifice has not been made," he replied, his voice weary. "Or because he doubted, or because her hunger now outweighs the guard." "Sacrifice." I spat the word. "You keep using that word. What sacrifice? We're gathering the people. We're saying the words. What more do you want?" He looked at me with an infinite sadness. Then he went to a shelf and pulled down a ledger, its covers stained and cracked. He opened it to a page filled with careful, spidery handwriting in Lakota. "My grandfather was at the Hollow," he said, his finger tracing the words. "He was 14 winters. He survived by lying still beneath his mother's body, feeling her life bleed out onto him. After, when the few survivors gathered, shattered, the medicine men of that time spoke. They said the violence had torn a hole in the world, that the spirits demanded a balance, a life, freely given, to stand for all the lives brutally taken, to say the killing stops here, to close the circle." He looked up. "No one did. The people were broken, terrified, scattered. Who would offer themselves? So the circle remained open. The debt remained. And now, generations later, the spirits demand what was owed. The ceremony, the remembrance, it is necessary, but it is not sufficient. The final offering, the true balance, is a life, A willing life. The room seemed to tilt. You're saying someone has to die. I am saying someone has to be willing to die, he corrected, his eyes holding mine with terrifying intensity. To stand before the spirits and before Pia'kʉtʉ and offer their own life as the final payment. To say, take me and let my people go. The spirits test courage, Sheriff. They test the depth of commitment. They want to know if the words of remembrance are backed by the ultimate price. The logic was archaic, brutal, and inescapable. It felt true in the same way the hoof prints had felt true, a horrifying piece of a puzzle clicking into place. And we both know who that someone must be, I said, the realization dawning with a cold, clear certainty. He nodded slowly. You are the bridge, the leader, the one who carries the authority of both worlds. Your blood is of this land and of the people who wounded it. Your life offered would have meaning. It would be a symbol the spirits might accept. I'm not dying for a story, I said, the protest weak even to my own ears. Then 6 men are dead for certain, he said, no malice in his voice, only a profound grief. Then 10, then 20. She will not stop, Sheriff Blackwood. She will harvest the young men of Red Willow until the spirits decide the ledger is balanced, or until there are no more sons to take. Your life, offered willingly, might satisfy the debt. Theirs taken by force will only be an installment. I left his home, feeling like a man walking to the gallows. The weight of the red bundle in my passenger seat was nothing compared to the weight now settling on my soul. My father called as I drove. Walter told you, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you? I know the stories. And I know you, Pia'kʉtʉ. I see the path you are on. I don't know what path I'm on, Dad. I just know 6 men are gone, and an ancient monster says she'll take more unless we pay a bill from 1892. Listen to me, he said, his voice urgent. The sacrifice is not about the dying. It is about the willingness to die. The spirits do not crave corpses. They crave courage. They want to know that a leader still exists who values his people more than his own breath. You must go to that ceremony truly prepared to give your life. If you go pretending, performing, they will know, and they will reject it. So they might not actually take me. They might not, or they might. That is the test. You must be genuinely willing to pay the price. Your heart cannot lie in that moment. He was quiet for a beat. Your mother, she would be proud of you, whatever you choose. The line went dead. I pulled over the side of the road, the vast, indifferent prairie sprawling around me. Willingness, not performance. Not a trick, a genuine offering. The next 3 days were a blur of impossible logistics and growing dread. Agent Reyes pursued his investigation with grim determination, his forensic team scouring the areas where the men had vanished, finding nothing. The lack of evidence was, to him, a puzzle. To me, it was a confirmation. He pulled me aside on the 3rd day, his professional confidence visibly cracked. Sheriff, I was at my hotel last night. I looked out the window. I saw a woman, standing under the streetlight, just looking up at my window. She was, he struggled for the word, luminous. I felt this pull to go down there. It took everything I had to close the blinds. What is happening here? She's real, Agent Reyes. I said quietly. How do you fight something like that? You don't. I said, you try to make peace. The tribal council meeting was a battlefield of its own. Skepticism from the younger. Assimilated members clashed with the fearful certainty of the traditional elders. My father and Walter Many Road spoke, their words simple and heavy. In the end, it was the raw, terrified pleas of the missing men's families that tipped the vote. The ceremony was authorized. Word spread like a grass fire. By the morning of the anniversary, a strange, electric tension hung over Red Willow. As Lena and I drove toward the hollow before dawn, we saw a stream of vehicles. Old pickups, sedans, SUVs, all heading the same way. Hundreds of people. They came out of fear, out of respect, out of a desperate, flickering hope. They brought their children, their elders, their uncertainty. The hollow at dawn was a somber, beautiful bowl in the land. The mass grave was marked by a simple stone monument, often ignored. Today, it was the center of everything. A temporary platform stood nearby. The air, cold and clear, was already thick with the smoke of sacred herbs as elders began their preliminary prayers. The families of the missing stood in a tight, painful cluster at the front, holding photographs of their sons. Maya Rivers clutched Kai's picture to her heart, her face a mask of hope and despair. Walter Many Roads, adorned in traditional beaded vest and eagle feathers, his face painted with sacred symbols, moved with solemn grace. He completed a series of prayers, calling to the four directions, to the earth and sky. Then he turned to the crowd, his voice amplified by a microphone that seemed an affront to the sanctity of the moment, yet necessary. "The people have come," he intoned. "The spirits are listening. Now, the one who stands as guardian must speak. He must give voice to the memory and make the promise." Sheriff Blackwood. A wave of silence rolled through the crowd. Every eye turned to me. I felt the weight of the bundled offerings in my hands, the heavier, invisible weight of the choice I had made. I walked to the platform, my boots crunching on the frost-whitened grass. I set the bundle down and faced my people. I saw skepticism on some faces, hope on others, deep grief on the faces in the front row. I saw my father, standing tall, his expression unreadable. I saw Agent Reyes at the back, his arms crossed, watching. I took the microphone. My voice, when it came, was rough but carried on the still morning air. "My name is Eli Blackwood. I am the Munu, and I am not. I am the sheriff of Red Willow." I took a breath, looking over the sea of faces, then past them to the simple stone marking the pit where hundreds of my ancestors lay. 132 years ago, on this ground, soldiers of the United States Cavalry surrounded a camp of our people here. They were cold. They were hungry. They were seeking peace. The crowd was utterly still. The soldiers demanded their weapons. A shot rang out, from which side history has lied about, and then the soldiers opened fire. They fired their rifles and their carbines into the teepees. They shot men coming out with their hands up. They shot women trying to shield their children. They shot the children. I could see the impact of the unvarnished truth hitting people. Some bowed their heads. Others stared, wide-eyed. They did not stop until there was no one left to shoot. Over 200 people. Mothers, fathers, grandparents, babies. Murdered, not in battle. In a slaughter. My voice grew stronger, fueled by a righteous anger that was both mine and borrowed from the spirits of the place. Then they stripped the bodies. They took their sacred items as souvenirs. They threw the dead into a pit like garbage, and the soldiers who did this, they were given medals for bravery. I let that hang, let the ugly truth of it settle on everyone present. For 132 years, this crime has been called a battle. The wound has been covered with a lie. The debt for this blood has gone unpaid. The spirits of this place have waited for justice. They have waited for someone to say what really happened. I look toward the families of Kai, Elijah, Noah, and the others. That debt hangs over us. It is in the poverty we can't escape. It is in the sickness that takes us too young. And it is in the disappearances of 6 of our sons. Kai Rivers, Elijah Bear Robe, Noah Little Sky, Raymond Tall Bear, Marcus Little Shield, David Two Rivers. They were taken by something born of that unpaid debt. Something called Pia'kʉtʉ. She is real. I have seen her. and she takes because we have not settled the account for the blood spilled on this ground. I turn fully to the mass grave now, addressing the unseen, to the spirits of the hollow, to the ancestors who died here. We see you. Today, we remember you. We say your names in our hearts. We honor your suffering, and we ask your forgiveness for our long silence. I turn back to the living. My heart was a drum in my chest. This was the moment, the offering. The spirits want the debt paid. They want balance. I reached to my chest, not for the medicine pouch, but for the badge pinned over my heart. I unpinned it, the metal cold in my fingers. I held it up, the morning sun glinting off its surface. I am the sheriff. I am the guardian. I stand between the people and danger, so I will be the payment. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Maya Rivers stifled a cry. My life for theirs. You spirits of the hollow. You, Pia'kʉtʉ, take me, take my life, here and now, if it will bring our missing sons home, if it will balance the ledger, if it will end the vengeance and let our people heal. I offer myself, willingly, without reservation, because that is what a guardian does. He stands in the breach. I lowered the badge, holding in my open palm, and waited. The silence was absolute. The wind had died. The very world seemed to be holding its breath. The silence was profound. It was more than an absence of sound. It was a vacuum, a stillness so complete I could hear the frantic beat of my own heart thudding in my ears. The crowd was frozen, a tableau of held breath and wide, disbelieving eyes. The families in front stared at me, their expressions a tumultuous mix of horror, gratitude, and desperate, fragile hope. My father's face was stone, but his eyes were closed, his lips moving in silent prayer. Walter Many Road stood with his head bowed, waiting. Then the air changed. It wasn't a wind. It was a pressure shift, a sudden density that made my ears pop. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in an instant, a wave of cold emanating from the center of the mass grave. A mist, white and clinging, began to coil up from the earth around the monument, defying the dry, clear morning. She appeared at the edge of the gathering, materializing from the mist as if stepping through a curtain. Pia'kʉtʉ, in the full light of dawn, her beauty was even more devastating, more impossible. The white dress glowed. Her dark hair seemed to move in a breeze that touched nothing else. Every person in the crowd saw her. There was no collective scream, just a wave of instinctive recoil, a rustle of fear like dry leaves. People stumbled back, creating a wide, terrified circle around her. But no one ran. They were rooted by awe and dread. She walked forward, her steps silent. The cloven hooves, so shocking in the truck's headlights, were now visible to all, clicking softly on the frosted grass. A murmur, half prayer, half terror, swept through the crowd. She ignored them, her dual-faceted gaze fixed solely on me. She stopped at the base of the platform. Looking up, the contrast was surreal. The ancient spirit of vengeance and the sheriff with a tin star in his hand. "Sheriff Eli Blackwood," she said. Her voice, once melodic and sharp, now carried a resonance that seemed to vibrate in the chest of every person present. It was the voice of the land itself, speaking. "You offer yourself, knowing what I am, knowing what I have done." I swallowed, my throat dry as dust. "Yes. You understand the nature of the offer?" she continued, her head tilting. "It is eternal. It cannot be unmade. Once given to the spirits, a life is forfeit. Do you understand this?" "Yes." The word was a whisper, but it carried in the profound quiet. She studied me, her dark eyes seeing through skin and bone into the core of my intention. The burning heat of the medicine pouch was gone, replaced by a strange, calm coolness. She was looking for the lie, for performance, for the hidden plea for mercy. What she found, I realized in that moment was the truth. I was afraid, terribly afraid. But beneath the fear was a solid, unshakable resolution. I meant it, for Maya River's tears, for the empty beds in 5 homes, for the silent accusation of the Hollow, I would pay my life for a chance at theirs. It was a fair trade, and she saw it. A transformation came over her beautiful face. The haughty, vengeful mask softened. The cruel smile faded, replaced by something else, something sorrowful, weary, almost human. It was the sadness of a burden carried for millennia. For 132 winters, she spoke, her gaze sweeping over the hushed crowd. I have walked, I have waited, for someone to stand before the spirits and before their own people and acknowledge the debt, not with empty words, but with the ultimate offering, for someone to try to pay willingly what was taken by force. She looked back at the mass grave, her expression one of profound grief. Your ancestors were erased here, their blood soaked into this earth, crying out, and no one answered. The world called a battle and looked away. Your own people in their suffering let the memory grow fuzzy, let the lies stand unchallenged. Her voice hardened for a moment. The spirit's anger grew cold and sharp. It became me, and I began to collect. Then she turned her full attention back to me, and her voice changed again, becoming almost gentle. But you stand here today. You speak the hard truth that scars the tongue. You do not call a battle. You name it a slaughter, a crime. You honor the forgotten dead. And you, she paused, her eyes lingering on the badge in my hand. You offer the one thing that can truly balance a scale weighted with stolen lives, a life freely given, not taken in rage, but offered in love, for your people. She raised her arms, not in threat, but in a gesture of acknowledgement. The mist around her swirled more vigorously. The dead is acknowledged, she intoned, and her voice now seemed to come from multiple directions, from the earth and the sky. The offer is seen, and it is accepted. A wave of tension released from the crowd, but it was a confused release. What did that mean? But hear me, all of you, she continued, her gaze sweeping across every face. The spirits do not desire more death. They never did. They desired remembrance. They desired courage. They desired someone to say, the killing stops here. She looked at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw both her faces simultaneously, the breathtaking beauty in the skull beneath, not as horror, but as a natural counterpart to life. They desire the willingness, Sheriff Blackwood, not the life itself. Your courage is the payment. Your truth is the balm. She gestured with one long, graceful arm toward the western edge of the hollow, where the prairie stretched out to meet the Badlands, and they appeared. 6 figures, silhouetted against the rising sun, walking slowly, unsteadily, out of the shimmering heat haze that shouldn't have been there on a cold morning. A cry, raw and torn from a mother's soul, broke the silence. Maya Rivers. Then others. The families in the front surged forward, not with fear now, but with a disbelieving, tidal wave of hope. The crowd parted as the 6 young men walked into the circle of their community. Kai Rivers, blinking as if waking from a deep sleep, Elijah Bear robe, looking down at his own hands in confusion. Noah Little Sky, Raymond Tall Bear, Marcus Little Shield, David Two Rivers. They were pale, thin, dressed in the clothes they had vanished in, but they were whole. They were alive. The reunion was chaos, a beautiful, messy explosion of tears, embraces, sob questions, and wordless clutching. Mothers buried their faces in their sons' necks. Brothers pounded shoulders, laughing and crying. The 6 men seemed dazed, overwhelmed, but they held on to their families as drowning men hold to driftwood. Pia'kʉtʉ watched, her beautiful face now serene. The rod and bone of her other face were hidden, folded away. She looked satisfied, at peace. They are returned, she announced, her voice beginning to fade, to become part of the wind. The taken ones are restored. The immediate debt is settled. But then her form began to grow translucent, like smoke. She fixed the crowd with one last, piercing look. But know this, people of Red Willow. The greater debt is not erased. It can never be erased. What was done here is a stain on history. Your task is not over. You have made a promise. Her gaze landed on me. You must keep it, and I felt it like a physical touch. Teach every child the truth of the Hollow. Do not let the world forget. Do not let the lie comfort the powerful. Keep the wound fresh, for only a wound that is felt can truly heal. Let this memory be your strength, not your shame. Let it be the fire that forges your future, not the chain that binds you to the past. She was almost gone now, a wraith of mist and morning light. If you forget, if you let the silence return, I will come back. And next time, there will be no ceremony, no negotiation, no willingness will stay my hand. Remember the dead. Honor the sacrifice. Live your promise. With a final whisper that might have been the wind through grass, she was gone. The mist dissolved. The unnatural cold lifted, replaced by the gentle warmth of the rising sun. The oppressive silence shattered, replaced by the cacophony of joyous weeping, relieved laughter, and 100 overlapping conversations. I stood on the platform, my legs weak. The badge was still in my hand, cold metal warmed by my grip. I looked at it, then slowly pinned it back onto my chest. The weight of it was different. It was no longer just the weight of law, but the weight of a covenant made with the past. Walter Many Roads approached, his face wet with tears. He placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing hard. He said nothing. He didn't need to. My father walked through the crowd, people respectfully making way for him. He stopped before me, looked up at the platform. He didn't smile. He gave a single, slow, deep nod. It was the highest praise he had ever given me. Agent Reyes pushed his way through, his professional composure utterly shattered. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a shock that went beyond the rational. They're just here, he stammered, looking at the 6 young men being swarmed by medics and family. I saw her. I saw everything. What do I put in my report? I stepped down from the platform, feeling every hour of the last 5 days. Put in your report that the missing persons were located and returned to their families, that the community's cooperation was instrumental, that the case is closed. But the cause? The perpetrator. The case is closed, Agent Reyes. I repeated, my voice firm but not unkind. Sometimes justice doesn't look like a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like this. I gestured to the weeping, joyful reunions. He stared at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded, a man who had seen the map of reality redrawn, and was trying to find his place on the new one. Closed. He agreed, quietly. In the days and weeks that followed, Red Willow began a fragile, tentative healing. The 6 returned men were examined, debriefed, and gently questioned. Their stories were all similar and all vague. They remembered the beautiful woman, the awe for help, a feeling of overwhelming euphoria, then a long, dreamless sleep. They remembered no pain, no fear, just a timeless emptiness. They were haunted, but they were home. Counselors, both traditional and modern, worked with them and their families. The Hollow ceremony did not become a one-time event. By vote of the tribal council, it became an annual gathering, held every year at dawn on the massacre's anniversary. School curricula were changed. The truth of the Hollow, in all its brutal detail, was taught to every child. The story was told not to foster hate, but to foster resilience, to root identity in a truth that could not be shaken. I remained the sheriff. The job was the same, the domestics, the petty crimes, the endless paperwork. But I was not I wore the medicine pouch under my uniform every day, a quiet reminder. I patrolled Old Ridge Road often, especially at night. I was looking, but not with dread anymore, with vigilance, with respect. One evening, about 2 months after the ceremony, I was driving that lonely road as a thin moon rose. In my rear-view mirror, I saw a familiar pale shape standing by the mile marker where I had first spoken to her. I didn't stop. I didn't slow. I met her gaze in the mirror for a fleeting second. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't beckoning. She was just watching, a sentinel, a reminder that the past was cared for and the promise was being monitored. I touched the cool leather of the pouch through my shirt and drove on into the night, toward the scattered lights of home. That is the story of the debt and the offering, of the 5 days that stretch between the world we see and the world that lives beneath it. But this isn't just a story about Red Willow, or about Pia'kʉtʉ, or even about a massacre from the 1800s. This is a story about memory. The kind of memory that isn't stored in history books, but in the soil, in the stories whispered from grandparent to child, in the silent spaces between what is said and what is felt. It's about the debts we inherit, not just of violence, but of silence. The cost of looking away, of letting a comfortable lie replace a painful truth. We all carry these debts in different forms, in our families, in our communities, in our nations. Unhealed wounds in the past that throb in the present, manifesting as cycles of pain, as unexplained gaps, as hauntings both literal and metaphorical. The hollow demanded a price because it had been forgotten. Its pain had been sanitized, packaged, and filed away. The spirits in that story are not monsters. They are the unresolved consequence of that forgetting. They are justice itself, twisted by long neglect into something vengeful. And the only antidote wasn't more violence, but radical, courageous remembrance, speaking the true name of the wound, honoring it, and being willing to stand in the breach to stop the cycle. Eli Blackwood's journey is one we all face in some way. The journey from seeing the world through only the lens of our training, our logic, our modern certainties, to humbly accepting that there are older laws, deeper truths, and responsibilities that transcend our job descriptions. His sacrifice wasn't in dying, but in the willingness to die. It was in surrendering his certainty to protect his people. That is a heart of guardianship, not power, but responsibility, not control, but courage. So what does this mean for you right now watching this? I'm not asking you to believe in spirit beings with hooves. I'm asking you to listen for the hollows in your own world. What truths are you allowing to be softened? What painful histories are you politely ignoring because they're messy or uncomfortable? What cycles are you perpetuating? Because confronting the root cause seems too daunting. We live in a time that is desperate for forgetting, for the quick scroll past the difficult headline, for the simplified narrative, for the blame that lets us off the hook. But the winds of thought carry more than information. They carry echoes. The stories we choose to silence don't disappear. They gather in the quiet, and eventually they demand to be heard. They might not appear as a beautiful woman on a dark road. They might appear as a repeating pattern of failed relationships, as a community stuck in a generational rut, as a society grappling with the same divisions decade after decade. Unpaid debts compound. The work, then, is the work of Eli Blackwood. It is the work of turning toward the hollow, not away, of seeking out the true story, not the convenient one. It is the work of remembrance, which is an active, deliberate verb. It requires us to be bridges between the past and the future, between logic and intuition, between what we were taught and what we feel in our bones to be true. This channel, Winds of Thought, is dedicated to that very work. We are here to explore the stories that shape us, the seen and the unseen, the historical and the mythological, the personal and the collective. We believe that in these narratives, we find not just entertainment, but maps. maps to understand the currents we're swimming in, and the courage to change their course. If this story resonated with you, if it stirred something, a curiosity, a recognition, a need to understand the deeper currents in your own life, then you are already part of this community. And here is how you can engage, how you can help this essential work grow. First, and most importantly, if you haven't already, please like this video. That like is more than a thumbs up to an algorithm. It's a signal. It tells us that content with depth, that challenges and explores, has a place here. It helps these stories reach others who need to hear them. It fuels this entire endeavor. Secondly, subscribe to the channel Winds of Thought. By subscribing, you're not just getting notifications. You're planting a flag. You're saying, I am here for the journey. I am here for the stories that matter, that ask questions, that don't shy away from the shadows or the hard truths. Every new subscriber builds this community, telling the digital world that there's a hunger for meaning, for context, for narrative medicine. And thirdly, become part of the conversation. Comment below. Tell me, what is the hollow in your own life or in your community's history? What story needs to be remembered? What debt of understanding are we failing to pay? Your insights, your stories, your questions, they are the lifeblood of this channel. They guide what we explore next. They remind us that this isn't a monologue, but a dialogue across time and experience. The work of remembrance is not a solitary one. It's a chorus, and your voice belongs in it. The winds carry thoughts, but it is we who must give them a voice. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering with me. This is Winds of Thought. Until the next story, keep listening to the echoes.